We have Florence joining us now as a panelist as well.
Okay, great. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Carol Bornstein. I'm on the board of the Horticulture Society, and it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening. I worked with Florence Nishida at the Natural History Museum, where she is a research associate. Florence was deeply involved in our edible garden at the museum. In fact, she actually started the pilot or test garden and began teaching classes on edible gardening before we even had the nature gardens. And once the nature gardens were built and opened, she then went on to continue teaching very popular classes for the museum on edible gardening. She also is a very knowledgeable mycologist. She teaches a monthly class for the LA Mycological Society that used to meet at the Natural History Museum. I imagine they've been doing their meetings by Zoom. I'm not actually sure about that. She can maybe tell you. It's a really wonderful group of people with great speakers, by the way, and Florence's regular class. And some of you may also know her through her work as a master gardener. And also she was the co-founder of the LA Green Grounds, a nonprofit that helps people convert their front yards to edible gardens. And perhaps she will share a little bit about that during her presentation this evening about growing Asian vegetables. So please welcome Florence.
Thank you. Erin, I'm going to go full screen and.
Perfect.
Okay. Let me start here. All right. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in. I think Asian vegetables have been ignored by the larger population, and they certainly deserve to be better known because they are quite tasty and they are beautiful to have in your own home garden. I am
Florence?
showing, yes?
Your screen isn't sharing yet, just as a note.
Okay, let me know when.
All right. Try to hit the share screen button one more time.
Let's see, I need to get out of my PowerPoint then. What's the best way?
You can minimize PowerPoint and open up the Zoom screen again.
Okay, let's see. I don't have a control. I don't see a control for minimize. So let's see.
Exit or hit. All right, perfect.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Here's my tech person, my husband. All right, now what do you want me to do?
So now in Zoom,
share
you're gonna
screen. Okay.
Share screen, exactly.
All right. And you want me to just hit share?
Then you want to
you want me to do the Asian. Oh, let's see.
All right, now we can see your screen.
Okay.
All right, so you can
get this up
make
here.
that full screen.
Make this full screen? Oh, yeah. Okay, and then go to here. Okay.
Is that working?
Yeah, but no, it's going because I need to go back to here. Start there. Okay.
All right.
All right.
We're set.
Okay. So thank you so much for inviting me to talk to the society, and I hope some of our other LA Green Ground people are also listening in, and many students that I've taught. They will know that I'm always including Asian vegetables in any vegetable garden I start, and I will, as I go through my talk, I will explain to you why they should be in everybody's garden. So this is my favorite. This is the Japanese purple mustard, also maybe known as the Osaka purple mustard. And the great thing about this one is it is gorgeous. And I will talk more about it when I get to that part of the talk. So let's move on. All right, there are many, many reasons why you should have these vegetables in your garden and know how to grow them. First of all, they're very easy to grow in our climate. Many of them prefer warmer temperatures and a long growing season than than a chilling period. And so they're natural for us here in Los Angeles. They are productive. They will fruit for a long time, and you can harvest them also for a long time. I'm still harvesting a number of these things now and getting ready to plant the spring plants. They are all nutritious. They have many vitamins and minerals in them. They have been the source of sustenance for peoples around the world, as well as in Asia, where most of them originated. And I have a couple of interesting stories to tell you about a couple of those things. They are, for most people, novel in taste. That purple mustard, for example, my title page vegetable, is super hot. It's like wasabi. And when I would give people a taste of it in the garden, I would always ask first, do you like hot things like peppers? And if they did, then I said, try this. But the other interesting thing about that vegetable is when you cook it, it completely loses that hotness, and it's a good, mild, but tasty vegetable. They are also beautiful oftentimes, or interesting in appearance and in texture. And of course, they have a wide use. You can eat many of those raw or cooked or pickled. And so I hope that you will give those a try because they are also tasty. And now that we have the internet, you have access to many, many recipes. I've found several sites that I like that feature Asian vegetables, and especially the ones that are not very well known. Most of them are quick cooking. You don't have to stew over them. Most of them are perfect for stir frying. So they're excellent for people who are busy, and you can come home, pick your vegetables, rinse them off, and you will have a meal in about 20 minutes in many cases. They are attractive plants in the home garden, so you can use them as an edible landscape. They can accompany your other horticultural plants, or you can have them grow in your separate vegetable beds. Some of them are perennial, or they will survive our winter period that's colder and come back once the spring arrives. And so they are also useful for our home landscapes so that you don't have bare soil in certain places. Many of them are also good for small space gardening for containers. And I know there's a great need for plants that are edible, easy to grow, delicious, productive, that you can grow in containers. Many people don't have a garden yard, and they are growing in pots on their patios or their balconies. So I encourage people as I go through this talk to jot down some of the ones that they might want to try. I organize the talk kind of into groups just so that there's, so that you feel a sense of connection instead of it being completely random. And so I'm going to start with the legumes. All of you are gardeners and realize and know the importance of legumes for fixing nitrogen. Nitrogen, as you probably all know, makes up about 80% of the gases that are in our atmosphere. And of course, we breathe oxygen and respire carbon dioxide, but plants take up carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, but they absolutely need nitrogen compounds for their growth, especially for their leafy growth. And so, and many of our soils in Southern California are low in nitrogen, and if you grow these leguminous plants, you are helping to provide that much needed nitrogen to the plants through the bacteria that fix the nitrogen or produce compounds with nitrogen in them. All right, so this one is from a market in Hawaii. in Hilo. I encourage you, if you have, are you planning to go to Hawaii at some point, be sure you visit the town of Hilo. It's one of the most Hawaiian of towns, and I like it very much, but it has a superb farmer's market, well worth visiting just for that. The variety and abundance of tropical fruits and vegetables is impressive. So I took pictures here of two things one vendor was selling. On the right are well, the whole thing are pea sprouts with the tendrils in the group on the right. You can eat the pea shoots of both snap peas and snow peas. The English peas are not as good because there's a layer of material that's between the outer, the epidermis, and that tends to be very chewy and tough. But snow peas and snap peas don't have that layer, that membrane, and so they are quite tender. If you want to enjoy pea shoots as well as the pea pods, be sure you plant some extra seeds just for the shoots. They are lovely, quickly stir-fried. They have a slightly sweet flavor, and they definitely taste like peas. And here are the peas that I generally grow, both in the teaching garden and at home. Sugar snap peas. As you know, these can be eaten entire pod. You don't have to shell them. And you can eat the shoots of this plant. Set aside a planting for the shoots alone, because as you know, if you harvest the shoots, the leafy portion, that will definitely forestall the fruiting of the plant. And you also want to eat the pea pods. This is a way of planting that I want to show you. I used a container in this case because it was January 27th when it was before, actually it was planted in December. This is on the end of January. I had planted bok choy in the pot, and then I also had planted pea seeds. So the peas were growing and got to a good size by the time my bok choy was pretty much finishing. And by March 5th, I was eating a lot of peas. This is kind of getting towards the end of the pea season. So you see that I had a really long run of vegetables to eat just from that one pot. I'm presenting this because it's an interesting plant. I haven't grown it myself, but I've eaten it. It's very popular in Southeast Asia and in China. It's called the winged bean, and it's rather thick. It's about a half an inch in thickness, and it will be about 8 to 10 inches long. It's quite crunchy and is perfect for stir fry. It likes warmer temperatures, so as with some of the other Asian vegetables, don't think about planting them in the early spring. You have to wait till things warm up a bit. All right, this is from the farmer's market. We in Southern California, at least most people I know, don't collect ferns. They are collected frequently in other parts of the United States by people who know how to forage. But on the left are the yard-long beans, and these are the beans that I strongly urge you to plant. They are not only a novelty and intriguing to look at, they're fun to grow. They have a very long harvest period, so be prepared for that. Before you plant those bean seeds, be sure you put up support for them. Not only are the beans long, but the plants grow like an indeterminate plant and continue to produce this long vine that can go on for 9 or 10 feet long. So you need to provide support for it. And then at the base of the poles, plant your bean seeds. Again, good planting is maybe 3 seeds per pole, because one is for insurance, just in case, and the other 2 may germinate. when I show students how to put up a teepee for support for beans and cucumbers, this is what I tell them to do. You collect your bamboo poles, or you can use your plastic ones, I guess. For these yard-long beans, you need something that's at least 8 feet long. If you can get 10-foot poles, that's even better. And gather them together in a bunch, and then take some strong twine and tie the poles at the top about 6 to 8 inches down from the end. Make a very tight knot. Then gather at least 2 friends and have them grab some of these poles and spread these poles apart, and then each person will push down maybe 2 of those poles down into the ground. You need to insert those poles at least 5 to 6 inches in the ground. So be sure you moisten the soil before you do that, or you're going to find it impenetrable soil there. And if you all do it at one time, 1, 2, 3, push, it will work very well. It'll be very easy. Whereas if you try to do it alone, it will be a little hard to tackle. All right, here's the yard-long beans in our teaching garden, and you can see those, I'm going to use my pointer here. You can see these, which look like fine threads on the outsides of the plant. So those are the yard-long. They're still quite young and so thin, but you can see that from this planting that you get a number of beans. In fact, when they're at their peak of production, for a family of 2 people, all you need to do is collect maybe 4 or 5 beans, because they are long. They're 15 inches to 18 inches long, and you'll be cutting them up, trimming them to get into your cooking utensil. So here's a close-up, and you can see the different. There's the young one. They're still short, and they will increase in length as time goes on. Here's the perfect size for cutting, for harvesting to cook. This is a little plumper, but still good edible. And I'm going to show you some more. Here's a close-up that I want to point out something. When you harvest Blue Lake, pole beans, you frequently will cut off the petiole here, and then collect the bean. In yard-long beans, if you'll notice these little nubbins at the top, at the end of the beans, those are actually flower buds. So if I trimmed the beans at this point, I'm going to lose production. I'm going to lose future beans. So when you trim these beans off the plant, cut the tops of the beans here, like that. And remember to tell anybody else who's in your garden to do the same, or you will wonder, why is this plant not producing very much? All right, so here are 3 stages, and again, as I pointed out, the narrow cylindrical stage here is the best for eating, and the easiest thing to do is to cut them up and then throw them into a fry pan or a wok that you've heated up oil and perhaps a garlic clove, got it nice and hot, and then throw those bean parts into the pan and let it sizzle up. And when you're almost done, you can add a bit of anchovy, which is what I like to do, of course, or shrimp paste. That would also be tasty. And then take them right off. You don't want to boil these beans. You don't want to cook them a long time. They're splendid when you just quick fry them. Now the bean over here on the right is much more mature. You can still collect and eat those. The pod part will be more chewy though, and not as tender as this young one in the middle. So pick it anyway, because as you know, if you are not collecting the fruiting part of a vegetable, you are really teaching the plant to wind up its business, because the plant thinks, okay, I've done my job, I've put my seeds out, I'm ready to quit. And you don't want that plant to do that. You want it to keep on making more flowers, more fruit, and in the case of the bean, more seeds, of course. On the left over here, the pod that is turning brown, and right here in the middle, the pods that are brown, those you should just allow to continue to ripen and to dry completely, and then collect those and use those as seed for planting your next plant. These plants are open pollinated or they're self-pollinating, and they don't, you can plant these seeds and you will get the same plant next year. So once you have grown these and saved seed, you're set. All right, let's go to the brassicas. Chinese vegetables that are particularly well known and eaten by people are the mustards, members of the cabbage family. There's, of course, the Chinese cabbage, which I'm not showing here, the Napa cabbage, because that takes an enormous length of time to get to harvest, as does cabbage, European cabbage. There's a kind of a Chinese broccoli, and I'm going to show you, these are the vegetables that you're familiar with that are European in origin. This is the Asian mustard that is in the group that are called rosette mustards. In other words, they don't form a round head like a cabbage. They form a sort of an open flower-like head. And I planted this also in a container, and this is March 10th. I also had some parsley, so I thought, well, it'd be nice to have that, and there seemed to be space. And this is a lesson that we all have to learn. Vegetables do grow, they grow larger in size. And this is March 10th, and this is 10 days later, on March 21st. The parsley is going to eventually get overwhelmed, so you can harvest it now. But the bok choy is continuing to grow very large. Now, as a home gardener, you are not going to harvest the entire plant because you're not a farmer. A farmer needs to bring his vegetables to the market, and so he needs to have a large parcel, you know, to sell that will look good on the shelves. You are more interested in eating. And so with the bok choy, you can harvest the larger, let me see, where's my pointer? The larger and the older leaves, and the plant will continue. It has meristematic tissue in the middle that will continue to replace all of these older leaves. So you can harvest enough certainly for your supper, and in about a week you can come back and harvest more. With this kind of continuous harvesting, I discovered, very nice surprise, that the bok choy will form from the sprouts another kind of a miniature bok choy plant. So you see I have 3 points here where I've already harvested these baby bok choys. So this plant can continue to grow on. The stem will keep rising until, of course, we get the hot weather, because members of the Brassicas don't especially like heat. And I'm going to show you a quick meal made from just going out to the garden and collecting bok choy. These are those white stems. You could, of course, substitute chard if you're growing that. The peas, the snap peas or snow peas if you have those. Shishito peppers, here and here and here. Shishito peppers are definitely the pepper to grow. They're the most easy to grow, reliably produce a lot of peppers, and you can continue to crop all summer long. And then lab beans, and these are these purple beans here, and here, and here, and here. We have those growing in our garden, and those are from Southeast Asia. And Malabar spinach, and that's these slippery looking greens here that I threw in at the last minute. So you have a nice, tasty vegetable dish with a variety of textures and colors and tastes, well worth growing these plants for. Tatsoi is one of these rosette brassicas. It's a neat looking plant and it grows very close to the surface of the ground. They generally do not get very large. A good size, I would say, is about 7 inches in diameter. If you grow tatsoi, I would suggest growing them with plenty of space so that they will fulfill their larger potential and each leaf will become larger. Because remember, as a home gardener, you're more interested in eating rather than in selling. Whereas a farmer will grow tatsoi close together so that he can cut numerous of them and have something to take to market. I like Chinese broccoli gailon. I like it in restaurants, but I cannot grow it. For some reason, it's been hard for me to grow. They turn out to be spindly and not very tender. But I do grow an heirloom collard greens called green glaze. It is the best collard green to grow. And if you would like some seed, I save seed of it. It's because it's an heirloom, I can safely save seed of it, and I have an abundance of that I can give away. It is very resistant to pest damage for some reason. The aphids don't like it, many of the beetles don't like it, and it's sweet tasting. It has bright, shiny leaves, and I suspect that waxy surface, the shiny surface on this variety is what probably makes insects avoid it. It is a perennial. I mean, you can just keep it growing for the longest time. Once the stalk gets extremely thick and more woody, maybe you'll want to remove it. But by then, if you've let seeds fall into the soil, you have a lot of young green glaze growing. When it does start to go to seed and flower, which all mustards do, usually at the end of the warm season, you can crop those shoots that have the flower buds. You know, here we go, these flower buds, and they are very, very tender. You can steam or braise them. I put oyster sauce on them. Very quickly, you prepare this dish, and then the plant will continue to give you more flowering buds. So you can have this pseudo Chinese broccoli for, I would say, 2 months at least. All right, this is a very pretty planting of pots of mixed Asian greens. There's the purple mustard on the left and here. And then these are different mizunas, the frilly ones, and that might be a frilly mustard. Here's mizuna. Mizuna is an excellent plant to grow, and especially if you have a small garden, if you have a small space, you can also put those in containers. It grows basically flat with some height, and it's a very attractive plant. There's green mizuna and there's also a purple colored one, so you can mix the two. I think in this bed I had green on one end and red on the other. There's continuous harvesting with this plant also. These leaves down here at the bottom, you can just trim them with scissors, and the plant will continue to fill from the center, from the middle. And mizuna is a very long-lasting plant as well in that season. It's fairly tolerant of warmer weather. It doesn't quickly bolt and go to seed, and the leaves stay tender even though the plant gets large. So here's another example. I plant with good distance between the mizuna so that each of the leaves gets to be a little bit larger. I like that better than the really small lacy leaves. But this is excellent in salads. You can just add them to whatever other salad greens that you have. You can also saute this in a stir fry. You can also throw the leaves in into a soup. It's particularly good with Asian soups, but I think it would be a good um, trim for any other kind of soup. This is a quick mizuna salad that I made. I just washed and rinsed off the greens and threw in some radishes and used rice wine vinegar, and there it was. All right, this is again my very favorite mustard, and it's the Japanese. This is the purple mustard, or the Osaka purple. It's growing wild as a volunteer next to my compost pile here, and it came. The seeds obviously were thrown by a mustard that I had in my bed, my vegetable bed, and so it sprouted here, and it has been here ever since. It's been about 5 years. So once you have this plant, you'll be in mustard for a long time. All right, and here is the fruiting, the little fruits here, and the flowering part. And you know that bees love yellow flowers. They particularly love these mustards. So this looks like many other mustards, but this is the purple mustard. I always leave one plant and let it go to seed, and then I am assured that I'll have more. This is in Hawaii, but I took this picture because I thought it was an interesting way to plant greens. The aisles or the pathways are extremely narrow, just even under a foot wide, but they certainly increase their planting space and their yield for different greens. All right, I'm going to go to the not spinaches. I feel frustrated with growing spinach. I find that there's a low rate of germination, especially if you're planting, if you've missed the ideal perfect day to plant the spinach in, which is cooler weather, then I don't get good germination. And then once they start growing and the warm weather arrives in Los Angeles, you can have Santa Ana conditions in the middle of winter, then the spinach just gives it up. So I've stopped trying to grow spinach, but there are so many good substitutes. So here's amaranth, which is a common weed. It is a weeding plant in many places. Its origin is in Central America and Mexico, and so it's been adopted by the peoples who live there. But it's also spread all over Southeast Asia and is eaten by many people in those regions, and in China it's called Chinese spinach. Quite tasty, easy to eat, easy to grow, and you can eat it raw or sauteed. And this is my amaranthus. You recognize my compost pile back there. It's thrown seed, and I let mine get about 6 feet tall. It can get quite woody, and you're not eating stems, you're eating new leaves. So it's continuously giving you new leaves, and those can be sauteed or put in salads raw. It has a slightly nutty flavor, I find, and it's very good. In our teaching garden, we're growing New Zealand spinach, which is, you may be familiar with the relative of it. It's in Azoaceae. Do you remember the freeway planting, the ice plant? Okay, that's in that family. So this is somewhat succulent, and this was discovered and named by Sir Joseph Banks, a famous British botanist, who was on one of the voyages of discovery of Captain Cook. And they sailed, of course, all across the Pacific and many islands, but they discovered on the coast of New Zealand this plant that grows abundantly near the shore. So it's also a halophyte, salt-tolerant plant. And I can imagine, I am assuming that Captain Cook and Joseph Hooker developed the idea of carrying this on board. You know, the English Navy, the British Navy lost many, many sailors because of scurvy, because they couldn't carry enough citrus on ship for their long voyages. Once they found this plant is very rich in vitamin C, and being a halophyte, I'm sure that they could be watered with a little bit of salt water. It's drought tolerant, so it's very easy to grow and a survivor plant. when you eat it raw, it's crunchy, has a spinach taste, and you can also toss it in a stir fry. This is the other spinach that we grow in our teaching garden, the Malabar spinach, which is not a spinach. It's Basella. And there are two color forms, a white one, and this is rubra. It is a gorgeous plant with these dark red stems and dark red berries. The berries are not edible, they're not poisonous, but they're pretty tasteless. But the leaves of this Malabar spinach are very tasty and taste very much like spinach, both raw and when you cook it. When you cook it, it is mucilaginous. So it's great for people who love okra. If you're not fond of okra, then add this to your stir fry at the last moment, and you'll have a little bit of a crunch, and you'll have a nice spinach flavor. All right, now I'm going to cook cucurbits, and I think this is about midway of my talk. Here's again the Hilo Farmers Market with the Japanese long cucumber. It is very worth growing. There are varieties that are smooth skinned, as this one is. There are also varieties that are quite prickly, but both have tender, crisp, juicy, sweet flesh inside, and they are never bitter. And I had a student in one class. I used to bring tastings to students to let them taste a lot of these things that they had never been exposed to. And I had one student say, "I don't like spinach," very flat out. And I said, "Well, why don't you try this one?" And after she did, she was a convert, and she said she loved that cucumber. So we sold that one. When you're growing the Japanese cucumber and other cucumbers, it is a viney plant, so you should give it support. And I find one of the easiest supports to make is this, buy this concrete reinforcement wire. It often is sold in rolls, and you cut off a roll, you cut off a section long enough to make a cylinder with the diameter that you want. This is excellent for growing tomatoes on, also the vining tomatoes. Drive a stake in the ground next to the cage so that the weight of the fruit doesn't topple it over. But this will just keep these vegetables more or less in hand, and also let you see the cucumbers. If you grow cucumbers along the ground, you will miss them. They'll have gone, to ripe seed by the time you notice them. All right, now the one of the best vegetables that is in the cucurbit family from Asia or the pumpkins. The kabocha is now widely sold, even in the large supermarkets. It used to be sold only in Japanese markets about 10 years ago. The one on the right, the green one here, is referred to as a kabocha. There's a variety also that has lots of bumps and weird things growing on the skin of it, and is a beautiful sort of a gray bluish green color, and that's a chirimen. This one here that's sort of onion shaped, I guess, tapered at the top with either a red or an orange red color on the skin, is called the kuri. Kuri in Japanese means chestnut. And that refers to the fact that the flesh of kabocha is very unlike the American pumpkin. It has a kind of a chestnut texture to it, and it's a wonderful sweet flavor. It can be used, well, you've probably all eaten it in, what is the tempura? The tempura vegetable that you've eaten that tastes sweet, that's kabocha. So when you buy the kabocha, the seeds are going to be mature inside that fruit, and so you can collect those seeds and start them, and they will produce. Sometimes they will throw off and produce a slightly weird kabocha, but I find in most cases you're going to come back with what you started the plant that you bought in the marketplace. Now, in our teaching garden, we have one side of it is a berm. It's a slope next to adjacent apartment building. And Yvonne Savio, I hope she's here, will recognize the trick that she taught us all master gardeners, how to use a 5-gallon can as an olla. Olla is the Mexican word for pot. And in Mexico in ancient days, and maybe not so ancient, they would plant vegetables that would require a lot of water by planting a clay pot in the soil and filling the pot with water so that the water didn't run out very quickly, but gradually seeped out of the clay. And so we used our 5-gallon cans, and this is a recent, this year's master gardener, Laura, and her daughter Erin, who loved our garden. And here's the baby kabocha with the olla. All right, I'm going to go on to now the solanum. Potato, tomato, pepper, eggplant, everybody knows those plants. And the one, if you could only grow one pepper, I would say the easiest, the most reliable, the most productive is this Japanese pepper, shishito pepper. If you have eaten at Japanese restaurants, particularly at the small plates restaurants that have grill dishes, you've eaten the shishito pepper, or at least I hope you have. They are excellent. We also tell people, we caution them, it is a mild pepper. That's what it's known for. But I would say 1 out of 8 will surprise you. So that's kind of fun to put about 8 shishito on a skewer and then see who gets the hot one. They grow very well in pots, and here's the pepper close up. Now I'm going on to Japanese eggplant. I've discovered that probably the best variety that I've grown is one called Millionaire. It's highly productive. It will become a perennial unless you have a killing frost. It will look a little sad in the winter, but if you continue to give it just enough water so it doesn't completely dry out, it will come back in the spring, especially when it gets warm, and can be as productive in the 2nd year or the 3rd year. I think that's about it. And I have grown these in large, like whiskey barrels. They do very well. I hope you all know the general rule about picking Japanese eggplants or eggplants in general. You should harvest them when they get to be a good enough size where, you know, they're not really tiny, but where the skin is still shiny. So all of these should be picked now, even though this one here is a little bit small, but I would pick them all. And you can certainly put them in stir fry. They are excellent broiled. If you cut the length down and you broil them with maybe a miso sauce, they are also very good pan fried. All right, going to roots and tubers now. This is, of course, a mustard, as you plant people know, but it's a root, and we grow up for that. Some people grow daikon in places where they feel that their soil is extremely hard and hard to penetrate, as people do with sunflowers. Sunflowers do the same thing. Their roots kind of drill down into the soil. So daikon does the same thing. And the great thing about daikon radish is they will grow for a long time. I mean, it takes them a while to attain their lengths of, from 8 to 12 to 15 inches long. I wouldn't let it grow to 15 inches long because you will have a very hard time getting it out of the ground. So pull it up when it's a little bit shorter than that. But when the shoulders of the daikon appear above the ground, you'll probably be able to, it'll be a good harvestable size. Now with daikon, you know, you will plant them in the spring, they will be growing over the summer, and then you'll be harvesting them in the fall, or you can plant them in the fall, the early fall, and then they will overwinter, and then you can collect them in the spring. But whatever, if you plant an entire bed of daikon, you can just keep, harvest the ones you want to eat and then let the others be in kind of storage in the ground. That worked quite well. I find that gophers aren't particularly fond of it, so that's a good thing for me. All right. You've all planted radishes, I think, and seen the sprouts, whether it's a broccoli, cauliflower, daikon, name it, whatever's in Brassica, all of the dicotyledons will look like this, sort of a blunt heart shape. The radishes will develop a seed pod. These are ripe now for collecting the seed. When they're unripe and green, you can pick them off the plant and put them into your salad, and they are as good as radishes. They are tender, crunchy, hot, like the radishes. So if you have an abundance of radishes or daikon or whatever that's gone to seed, pick the green pods and use them right away. And you can let some of the other ones get ripe if you want to collect seed. All right, I am so glad I put this seed package in my photo because I didn't have a label with me when I planted the seeds, and I thought to myself, oh, I'm not going to remember what I planted. And so that's a good trick, and I suggest you do that. If you're planting particular varieties, you know, take a photo of that seed package, and then you'll remember. All right. This is the first time that I've grown Japanese turnip. Japanese turnips have a special reputation. They are not huge, hard, dry, fibrous. They are small, tender, very tender, and delicious, both raw and also quickly cooked. So I strongly urge you to give Japanese turnips a try if you are one of these people who say, I hate turnips, they're bitter. This is an entirely different vegetable. The seedlings came up very quickly. I think I planted those, probably May. Probably May. And I just put the seeds out into 2 rows, and I would say nearly all of them germinated. It had a very high rate of germination, which impressed me. So here they are in the relatively young stage. You can harvest this now. So when they're about an inch and a half, 2 inches across, that is a perfect size to harvest them. Japanese and probably Chinese people do too, use turnips both as a pickling vegetable and as also a green vegetable or something that you would cook. I make just a quick hors d'oeuvre by slicing the turnips and sprinkling a little sesame seed and a little chili powder and squeezing lemon over it in a small plate. And it makes a very nice side dish for whatever dinner dish you have. The greens are not prickly the way daikon leaves are. So they are also very tender, and you can throw them either in salads or you can quick stir fry them. And they're excellent that way, and they're excellent pickled. All right, now I'm going on to something called a sweet potato, the Japanese sweet potato, which is not at all like the American sweet potato that we eat at Thanksgiving that we call yam. It is actually a sweet potato, but the American one, not a yam. And this Japanese sweet potato has no resemblance to the American sweet potato. This is really got a lovely texture. It has the texture when you cook it of a good baked russet potato. So it's drier, it's not slimy, and it has a wonderful sweet flavor, a natural sweet flavor. So that when I cook with it, I not only bake it the way we bake the American sweet potato, it's exquisite that way, but I also use it as a vegetable to cook with, as you would say potatoes or carrots. You'll find it in the market named satsuma or murasaki. Murasaki refers to the reddish color. Satsuma refers to a place, location where a hybrid form was developed. Here's the inside of a baked Japanese sweet potato. And it tends to be creamy colored or a pale yellow colored. And here is the flowering of it. If you recognize the flower, you will know that this is a morning glory flower. And that's indeed what the Japanese sweet potato is. It's in the morning glory family. The other wonderful thing about Japanese sweet potato is you can also eat the leaves, and you may other sweet potatoes. I just don't know about that. But if you have an abundance of green leaves, then you can harvest some of the green leaves and really not hold the plant production back. When you see the flowers on sweet potato, that lets you know that the tubers are forming. When do you know when to harvest the sweet potatoes? You wait until the leaves are turning brown, the vines are turning brown. Despite your best efforts to water and keep it going, it is finished. And so then stop watering and let the plant dry out. You need to let the tubers dry out a bit in the soil, and then carefully dig it up. Don't let the soil totally dry out, because you'll never be able to get the potatoes out of that matrix of soil. And then don't wash it off immediately. Don't rub the dirt off immediately, because the skin of sweet potatoes is very thin until it ripens. So wait about a week and then carefully remove the clumps of dirt that are on there. And again, don't wash them off, and put them on a tray so that they are not piled up on top of each other, and put it in a dark, dry, relatively cool place, if you can find a place like that in your house at the end of summer, which is usually when we harvest the sweet potatoes. Okay, so this isn't our teaching garden. They are growing on that berm. There are actually 3 tubers that have grown these plants, and the mass now is quite large, and we can certainly harvest the green leaves. All right, I'm going on to something else that the Japanese call potato. Imo is the Japanese name for potato. This is referred to as the sato imo, sato meaning sweet or sugar. And it's a taro. It's not a potato. It's not in Convolvulaceae. It's actually in Araceae. If you look at the leaves, you'll see that you'll recognize that plant as an arum. And I have this also growing in a pot. I wanted to try it in a pot. The other reason I wanted to try it in a pot so that I could teach container gardening and encourage people. But I also have gophers, and I think now I've decided I'm going to risk it and plant this in the ground, because the taro is full of calcium oxalates, and I don't think gophers like eating those. So I would say it's safe to put those in the ground. All right, this is the leafing part. And as with the sweet potato, when the leaves turn brown and die back, that is when you can start to harvest them or start to look for them in the soil. In the spring, so these sweet potatoes, the sato imo, lives in the pot year round. It's a perennial, and in the spring, as the weather is starting to warm up, I will mulch with leaves, and the leaves will break down and give some more nutrients to the soil. Here's the fall or coming into winter, and I have harvested a number of these sweet potato corms. In Japanese, they're called children or grandchildren, sato imo ko, the child of. And I think there's a Chinese saying, famous saying or proverb, that once you have a sato imo plant, or they would call it something else, your children's children will have food. All right? And how do you know what to plant or when to plant? All right, you go to the store and you find sato imo, and you try to find some that are starting to sprout a little bit. In the case of these, I bought them and there was just a little white nub on the end of the satoimo, and I just put it in my pantry and waited, and I would say in about 3 weeks, those turned greenish, which told me, they're ready to photosynthesize, and so I can plant them. And so I planted them at this stage. I planted them about, I would say 5 inches below the surface of the potting soil. All right, and this is something I made with a kind of a Japanese chicken stew with the sato imo, which is these white things, and carrots, of course, and cilantro, and mitsuba. Let's see if I can find one. There's something in there. Maybe that is one. Mitsuba is a Japanese herb that has 3 leaves, and it is incredible in flavor. I can't describe the flavor. If you like chervil, it's something like chervil with a touch of cinnamon maybe, or nutmeg. It's a very intriguing herb, and even a sprig of it on soup just transforms a soup. And then shungiku. Shungiku is the edible chrysanthemum, which I'll show you in a bit. Now, the sato imo is a taro, but it's not the same variety as in Hawaii, the taro that is used to make poi. This is what they refer to as wetland taro. So it's grown in bogs like this. This is a taro bed. This whole area here is a taro bed in Waipio in Hawaii. And you see the water is they just let the water run through it, and the soil is quite muddy. Whereas the taro that I planted, the sato imo that I planted, is a dryland taro. So you plant it in a planting bed or in a pot. All right, let's go to herbs. I think my time is, where am I? My time. Okay, guess I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah,
Right,
Florence, if
yes.
you want to, we can get started with the Q&A maybe in about 5 minutes, if that works with you.
Okay, the herbs is the last thing, so that'll be
Perfect.
fine. Okay, lemongrass, of course, is, you think of it in as a Thai seasoning, but it's also used by the Chinese for seasoning. And how do you harvest lemongrass? You take a stalk and you yank it very hard down and break it away from the clump. And then you use the base of that lemongrass that you crush to flavor up your dishes. So I just wanted to show you that lemongrass is something you can grow in a pot. If you let it grow on the ground, it will be something like mint. In other words, it's in danger of kind of taking over that whole large area. So I would suggest keeping it in a pot. Thai basil that I'm growing has been growing for about 5 years now. It really attracts bees. They love it. And I have it near my tomato in a pot, my eggplant in a pot, and the shinguku, the shishito peppers. All right, this is the edible chrysanthemum that I showed you in that dish. You can see it is a chrysanthemum. It's a daisy flower. It can grow quite bushy. It can grow to about a 4-foot high, 4 feet wide bush if you let it. Or you can just keep cropping it and growing the greens. Once it does go to flower, the stalks are going to get thicker and tougher and fibrous. So you're just going to be harvesting the leafy parts. The Japanese love this herb. We use it in our New Year's soup. So I'm planning to grow mine now, start mine now, so that by the late fall and the winter, I will have enough shungiku for both the soup and as a cooked green. It is very, very tasty, prepared the way the Japanese do spinach. Where you boil it very quickly, or I pan steam it, and then you wring out the water and to make a kind of a roll, and then you slice it into sections, and then you use ponzu sauce or lemon juice. It's just exquisite. It has a very intriguing flavor. All right. This is my another favorite herb of mine. I know it sounds like I have so many favorites, but here's the shungiku, the edible chrysanthemum here in the end of this bed. And here's shiso. Shiso is in the mint family, but I think it's by far the best in the mint family. It again has an intriguing flavor. It's hard to describe. You have to grow it and try it. Once you have shiso in your garden, it will produce enough seeds so that it will return to this bed and wherever else you may plant it. So I don't have a date on this, but here's the shiso, and it's starting to put up flower stems. Here's my yard-long bean. So this is in the late spring, I think. And here's shiso in seed and my yard-long bean alongside of it. You can use the shiso as a foundation planting in a bed where it's going to be temporary, but you'll have an abundance of shiso to eat, and it's a pretty plant to have in your planting bed. And as I said, I love this plant, so I love it for eating as well as the way that it looks. So I cut some and I brought it in and I stuck them in a glass, and I thought, actually, this makes a very beautiful bouquet because the leaves are red on top, but the flower buds are this bright green. And then I just pick the leaves as I need them, sliced very thin, very, very thin, like in a chiffonade. Sprinkled over cold tofu is a wonderful summer dish. But after a few days, look at this. The shiso started to root beautifully. And so now, with all of these ends that I had cut from the plant, I can plant each of these or give them away, and somebody else can plant them and have more shiso plants. So please try that. And this is my last picture because I showed you some dishes. I'm a firm believer that if you don't show people how to prepare a particular vegetable they're unfamiliar with, that they won't grow it and they won't even buy it in the marketplace. So I want to encourage people to try these vegetables. And so here are some of the things that I use. Back here, kneading is sweet rice wine. And so you put that in most of your stir fries that you're going to add soy sauce to. You can add a little bit of that to a soup if you like, but we use it more for stir fries. Here's a rice wine vinegar, both of these. Perhaps one is seasoned and the other one is unseasoned, but this is wonderful to make those crispy cucumber salads, a sunomono. And it's also good on the turnip. The seasoned one has a slight amount of kneading, the sweet rice wine, in it. Okay, this is soy sauce, Japanese soy sauce. This is sesame oil, which is something else that you can add when you're stir frying your yard-long beans. That would be adding a great flavor. It's wonderful if you braise your kabocha in the sesame oil as well. This is oyster sauce, which is a common component of Chinese stir fry. It has a slight seafood flavor, and of course, fish sauce is good in any kind of a stir fry. This is a chili oil. This is Japanese 7 ingredient sprinkle, which has red chili, I think small pieces of tangerine peel, sesame seeds, and some other things. Chinese 5 spices, I think, also has a sort of a licorice flavor to it. This is something I discovered recently, which is a nice sprinkle with all of these things that I told you about, and you can put them on sliced raw vegetables of any sort. And then this is, of course, fresh ginger. Okay, and that is it. So ask away your questions.
All right, Florence. Well, actually, before we do start the questions, what I'm going to do is quickly do our giveaway with everyone that we
right.
still have in the webinar. So let me share my screen. And we will go to
Okay.
the wheel of names. And it will automatically give us a winner. Let's see. I see it's really pixelated on the screen, but it's flowing through here really well. And our winner is Kara H. Kara, if you are still on the Zoom, please raise your hand. Let's see, Kara, you here? I don't think Kara's here.
I don't see people on the screen.
I don't think I think you have to exit the full screen.
Oh, okay.
So let me try one more time. See if the next giveaway winner will be in the webinar still. All right, Cindy W. Cindy, are you here? Raise your hand. I don't think I see Cindy either. Oh no. All right, we will try one more time. Let's see. Lucky number 3. Ben L. Ben, please tell us you're here. I don't see Ben either. All right, well, we will contact the first winner. And let's get started then with our questions. So we'll probably take about 10 minutes if that's okay. Florence, we have
that's fine. That's fine.
All right, so the first question is from Kathy M. I planted winged beans and it is growing a lot of leaves, but no winged beans. Is this expected? I think it has been about 2 months.
Kathy, I would say that maybe you gave it a little bit too much nitrogen if you fed it. Did you feed it? Okay.
Well, if she answers again, I will let you know.
Okay. Hold back and do not give it any nitrogen fertilizer, because then the growth is mostly in the leaves and not in the fruit. I fertilize most of the plants. I do a general fertilizer at the beginning when I'm starting my beds, at the very beginning after winter is over. After that, I use compost or worm compost, and they tend not to be overly nitrogenous. All right, and then I see a question: are leaves of winged beans edible? Oh, do I have to click on answer live? Yes.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Okay, Shalimar. I don't know that for sure, but I suspect that they would be. I'm trying to think if I know any. All right, I do know a leguminous plant you should never eat, and that, of course, is the flowering sweet pea. But I don't know about the leaves. I believe they are edible, of winged beans.
All right, and another one is from Rachel N.
Rachel, okay.
Do you recommend growing the spinaches
Okay,
from
seed? All right. Rachel, you just need to visit our garden. My gosh, I can just give you cuttings. I have both Malabar spinach and amaranth. I have lots of seed. We're always pulling them up in our garden. So just email me at growtips@gmail.com. And I am usually there on Tuesdays and Saturdays teaching. And so Malabar, oh my goodness, I even have seedlings. I have starts, but we can give you seeds.
Rachel in the chat, by the way, says, on my way.
Okay. All right, Joe, can you eat mustard seed pods? Do you mean the yellow mustard? Is that what you're talking about? Do I get an answer from Joe?
I don't see one yet, but if it comes up, I will let you know.
Okay. I believe that that all of the mustard seed pods would be edible. The trick is to get them when they're green and tender. In other words, you can bend them. Once they get stiff and that sort of that tail end gets pokey, they're not going to be good for eating. But the regular radish pods are just excellent. All right, the next one is Sharon Wu. What is the depth of the container you grew the bok choy in? I think it was about 10 to 12 inches deep. Amazing. It was amazing. All right, and is that the last question? No.
No, there are a few
Okay.
more. If you'd like, we can
Joan?
take a few from here, and we also have one in our email and then a few in our chat as well.
Okay, I can go to the chat ones now. Can they hear me?
Yes, they can.
Okay, all right. Joan says, me. Oh, I'm not sure what she's asking. All right, and Amy is asking, what can I easily grow now? Well, you can easily grow purple mustard. You can start it now. You can easily grow, you can start bok choy now. Bear in mind, we're having 70-degree weather this week, and then it's going to be 92 on Sunday. So the trickiest part is germinating the seeds and not having them fry in a 98-degree, day. But otherwise, if you can manage to do that, then you can grow, I would say, most of the things I showed you, except for the large fruiting things. So not kabocha. The kabocha, you would start to plant, you would start the seed maybe in about February, March, and then plant it out in about April or May or June. I think June would be the last month you could plant that out. Same with cucumber. That is a warm weather crop, so you can't do that. And the same with the beans. The beans are summer crops. So and I want to give you a hint on the yard-long beans. Don't even try until it's at least, I would say, mid-May. They will not do anything while the ground and the air is still cool. They really like the warm weather. All right. See what else? Mary Han, what is the best place to buy Japanese? Oh my gosh, yes. I was going to give people handouts, and I didn't do that. But please go to Yamaguchi Nursery, and I think in the directory in Google it's Yamaguchi Bonsai Nursery, but they're far more than that. They have, I think, the most Japanese plants of any other nursery in Los Angeles. And Marianne will order, I'll get a flat of something that I'd like, but she does keep things in stock. And the nurseries were closed, for a while for the coronavirus pandemic, and she is now open. So please go and stop by. She's on Sawtell Boulevard. Now, seeds. Kitazawa Seed Company, Kitazawa, Kitazawa. They are the oldest seller of Japanese seeds in the United States. I think they began in 1918. They've been around for a long time. And they have a nice website. You can see the pictures of the different vegetables before you select one. Okay, and the other thing about Japanese plants, in the season, and say April, May, you'll find that some of the Japanese markets will sell plant starts. They will sell starts of shishito pepper, sometimes of Japanese tomato varieties, and cucumbers, Japanese cucumber. So you can either go to Little Tokyo, Anzen hardware store. He starts a lot of plants, or somebody does it for him. In West LA, Nijia Market often will have plants in front, outside. Okay. All right. And
Florence, we do have one from email.
Okay.
which is from Wally H, and it's about aphid control for long beans.
Oh, right. I saw that. Wally,
Yeah, he said,
Wally, I'm glad you asked that question because I was dealing with that in my home garden, not in our teaching garden. I have never had trouble with aphids on yard-long beans. And so I thought, okay, well, that's just not a problem. And then in my home garden long beans, I noticed the plants kind of struggling. They weren't really producing well. And then I noticed all of the ants that were climbing up one pole. They weren't all over the plant or I would have caught on. And so what I advocate to my students is what I did. I took my hose. I have a spray head on the hose that, you know, you can adjust to different formats. And I use the jet spray. You have to hold on to the plant, hold on to the vine, and then just really spray the vines. Don't worry, they're not that fragile. They're pretty tough. Just spray that whole plant, spray the ants, spray the entire vining part, including at the very top. The ants are really sneaky. They put those aphids in to the tight spots where the flower buds come out. And so it feels dangerous. I was trying first to tease out those aphids, and then there were so many that I just used the jet spray. And unbelievably, most of those flower buds, if they're very young, hung on. So do that. I had to do that at least 3 times. Never give up on aphids. Just do that until they're gone. All right.
all right. Well, Florence, if it's all right with you, we still have some more questions, but these ones we
Okay.
can email you, and then we
Okay.
can post on our website after you answer them at your convenience.
Okay.
We have a few more. Yeah, we have some in the chat and some in the Q&A, but I don't want to keep you too long. I don't want to keep our participants.
Well, I don't mind at all, Erin. It's up to you. I know that you have the raffle you want to do. So just.
Yeah, so the giveaway we already did. I do want to mention to everyone before you start to leave that on Thursday, November 12th, we will have our next webinar, and it will be Native Restoration Landscaping with Dennis Mudd of Calscape. So everyone make sure to mark your calendars and keep your eye out on our website and our social media, which will have all of the up-to-date information and the link coming soon as well.
All
So
right.
Florence, yeah, I think we can wrap it up over here. I will send you all of these questions,
All right.
and I will also provide your email growtips@gmail.com
Right.
on our questionnaire as well, so that anyone who reads the questionnaire and they still have questions, they can always contact you.
Okay. All right. Sounds
All
good.
right.
Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. And I encourage you to grow these wonderful plants.
Oh, exactly. You've given me a lot of new things to add to my daily menu. So I am
Good.
very excited. Thank you so much for such a fascinating presentation as well. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Florence,
you.
thank you again.
Good night, everyone.
Hopefully I'll see you in your garden soon.
Okay.
All
Bye-bye.
right, bye.